Welcome everyone. My name's Nathan Robinson and I'm the Woodland Officer for Devon Wildlife Trust. I've been asked this evening just to give a brief bit of background on Ash Dieback in Devon, and hopefully this will provide some context for Rosie's talk, which will follow, looking at the Saving Devon Treescapes project. So I thought I'd start with this lovely picture of an ash tree at Tipton St John in East Devon. And this is really to illustrate that ash trees not only provide many benefits to society in terms of the ecosystem services that they provide, but they're also of great cultural and landscape value too. So ash is a widespread species that makes a significant contribution to many landscapes. And there are thought to be 955 ash-associated species occurring in the UK, over half of which are lichens. So they're very important for biodiversity, and in particular, these lichen communities that the trees support. But ash trees also provide unique ecosystem functions within our woodlands in terms of nutrient cycling, and they support a distinct and diverse ground flora as well. But unfortunately, our ash trees are under threat. Ash dieback is an invasive fungal disease that affects our common ash trees and other fraxinous species, and it's now widespread across the UK. And unfortunately, there's no means to control its spread on a landscape scale. So what this means is that we can expect to lose 90% plus of our ash trees over the coming decade. This will, the cost will run into the billions, and the impact is going to be huge. It will undoubtedly change the landscape forever and may threaten many species which rely on ash. Just to provide a little bit of context for those of you that remember Dutch elm's disease, which wiped out most of our native elm trees. It was thought that over the two pandemics of the 1920s and the 1970s, we lost around 60 million mature elm trees. Now, to put that in perspective with ash, it's estimated we have around 150 million ash trees across the UK. So the scale of this is going to far exceed that of even Dutch elm disease, which was pretty catastrophic. Where we'll feel the impact the most will be outside of our woodlands. So where there's less opportunities for natural regeneration to replace trees, and where ash trees play a really significant role in terms of landscape character and habitat connectivity. Ash is the second commonest tree outside of woodlands in Devon. And just along our road network alone, there's close to 500,000 trees in Devon. So in terms of a logistical challenge for our highways team, in terms of managing the associated risk with these dead and dying trees, it's enormous. They're also a frequent tree in our urban areas, our gardens and our parks, where they make a big contribution to our urban landscape. So we'll be sorely missed there as well. The effects on our semi-natural woodlands will likely be less severe, greater opportunities here for natural regeneration to replace trees, and because of less in the way of health and safety concerns, we should be able to retain the trees in these landscapes for a lot longer. Although they do make up quite a considerable proportion of woodland cover in Devon at 22%, sort of pure ash stands in mature woods in Devon are rare, so they tend to make up a smaller proportion of the overall canopy in our woodlands. This does vary dependent on sort of soil and climate as you travel across Devon, East Devon being an exception as you move into more sort of alkaline soils where you may get more ash in the canopy, and it's in these woodlands that we're going to see slightly more severe effects. But also plantation woodlands. Ash was a favoured species for foresters, for timber and firewood, and these monoculture crops will be heavily hit, so they will need to look for alternatives. A little background to the disease. Ash dieback is a fungal pathogen native to East Asia. It arrived in Europe around the early 90s and then spread through Western Europe and probably arrived in the UK soon after. It was officially recognised in 2012, although subsequent research has shown that it's been here since at least 2005. Its scientific name is Hymenocipphus fraxineus, but it also used to be called Chillara fraxineus. You may hear it referred to as Chillara. But in its native range, where it co-evolved with other sort of related species of ash trees in East Asia, it had very little ill effects. But in our European ash and our common ash tree here in the UK, its effects are quite severe. There's some good news. There is genetic tolerance within the population, thought to be around 3 to 5%. I've been optimistic here and went for 5% of the ash tree population. So these are trees that are not technically resistant. They still get infected, but they've got better sort of coping mechanisms, if you like, to deal with the ill effects of the disease. The spores of the fungus are spread by the wind, hence why it's so hard to control. These spores can travel vast distances and will reinfect trees year on year. So if you look at this picture here on the right that I just brought up, this is the main point of entry for the fungus into the tree. So the spores will land on the leaf and then it will colonize those tissues. And that results in this browning off of the leaf that you can see here. It can then spread further into the sort of branchwood of the tree and cause girdling and dieback of branches. So when we're looking at our ash trees and trying to decide whether they are infected with Ash Dieback, canopy decline is the main symptom we use to sort of assess tree health and monitor sort of disease progression within individual trees. And it's a well-named disease, Ash Dieback, as it causes dieback of the leaf canopy, which results in sort of what you can see in these images in front of you, really. So you'll get sparsely covered clumpy crowns in the trees with these characteristic dead tops. So out towards the periphery of the crown, you'll have dead branches, and these trees would have lost a lot of their leaf cover from the extremities of their crown. And this is often goes alongside this kind of pom-pom growth, as we call it. So this bushy growth, clusters of new growth in towards the center of the crown. And this is the tree's way trying to compensate for that defoliation and leaf loss caused by the fungus itself. So trees will be infected year after year, and it's really a disease of attrition, causing increasing damage to the tree. And they can decline in as little as a few years. And the end result, really, as you can see in this central picture here, is you've got the sort of skeleton of a former crown, and all the leaves have been lost, and effectively the fungus has disrupted the sort of water and nutrient transport system that the tree relies on. But some other symptoms that you might be able to find when you're out and about and looking at your ash trees, particularly on younger trees, these are easier to spot where you can get access to the small branchwood. But infected shoots will turn a sort of characteristic pinkish brown color, as you can see on the picture on the left here. And that's where the pathogen, the fungus, has managed to get in and cause death of those tissues. You may also find lesions. So you can, if you cast your eyes at this central picture, Ash Dieback causes characteristic diamond-shaped lesions. So if you can see just in a sort of purplish, pinkish color in this photo here, you've got this diamond-shaped lesion, which is often located where a shoot or branch joins a sort of main stem. If you spot these, then you know definitely you've got ash dieback in that tree. The canopy decline, although the best indicator we've got for monitoring tree health in ash, and often the first sign you'll see, in isolation might not necessarily mean you've definitely got ash dieback, as there are other things such as drought stress which can cause similar symptoms. But these diamond-shaped lesions, that if you see one of these, then you know you've definitely got a problem there. And you may also see the tree retaining clusters, dead clumps of leaves, but these aren't to be confused with the ash keys that were developed in late summer and be retained on the tree through the winter months. And then this slide just shows some of the symptoms that you may find down towards the base of infected ash trees. So typically a healthy ash won't have much in the way of epicormic growth running up its main stem. If you look at this picture on the left here, you can see a whole sort of nest and mess of new shoots coming out of this tree here. These young shoots are the tree's response to try and compensate for its leaf loss in the canopy. And some species of trees, such as oak, will readily put out new epicormic growth, but it's not a typical habit of ash trees. So if you see that, then it's a good indication that the tree's under some level of stress. In areas of woodland that have got really high infection levels and really high sort of spore loading on the woodland floor, then you can get these basal lesions, which you can see in the picture on the right here. So these express themselves through sort of like a staining on the bark, and this is where the fungus has managed to get a direct point of entry into the base of the tree. And this is very concerning from a tree safety point of view if you see these, because the fungus is getting in there and undermining the sort of structural tissues that are keeping the tree upright. And ash dieback often also opens the door for other secondary pathogens, such as honey fungus, pictured here in the middle. And these come in and colonize the tree and can cause quite rapid decline and tree safety issues. It's important to note that disease progression is very erratic. So whereas some trees can succumb quite rapidly, young trees in as little as 2 to 3 years, mature trees in as little as 5 years, others, and the vast majority, will last a lot longer. So it'll be a drawn out, protracted death, unfortunately, for most, but over a period of probably 10, 15 years or even more. There's also a small few that will survive apparently untouched. And this could be down to genetic factors, like the 5% that we expect to be genetically tolerant to disease, but also there's a lot of other local environmental factors that will play a big role also. So if it's an open grown tree in favorable sort of environmental conditions with little competition, those trees are likely to fare a lot better than a tree in a crowded sort of woodland environment with a high spore loading, for example. But although generally, if a tree is infected and susceptible to disease, it will result eventually in the tree's demise. It's not necessarily a directly linear thing. So from one year, the canopy could look awful, and then it may appear to spring back the following year, only to subsequently get reinfected. So it is that constant barrage of the disease, of the fungus, that really breaks the trees down. Now, obviously, this has implications for tree management, and it is vital that we address the risks posed by this tree disease. So trees in high-risk locations really are the focus here in terms of those that may require remedial action. So trees in areas such as roadsides, next to buildings, areas of high public access, close to schools, for example. These trees may require felling or some other form of remedial action. We should try and avoid felling where other alternatives are possible. So that might mean diversion of footpaths, temporary closures, or other tree management techniques such as crown reduction, limb removals, and pollarding. But it does highlight the need for regular surveying monitoring to make tree management decisions. And that's what we're doing here at Devon Wildlife Trust. We're looking to strike a balance really between retaining diseased ash trees for as long as possible, whilst also addressing the health and safety concerns that come with this tree disease. So sort of to wrap up, we should look to retain trees wherever possible. So in low risk locations, such as this one pictured, we should just leave the trees in situ and do nothing. We've got to remember there is the potential for tolerant trees to exist, and it's vital that we safeguard those into the future, as they will, secure the long-term future of ash trees in the British Isles. And also, diseased trees provide great decaying wood habitats, which will benefit a whole suite of wildlife. They provide opportunities for many plants, fungi, invertebrates, and nesting opportunities for birds and bats. So where we can, and we can just leave the trees to fall apart and leave standing and fallen deadwood, then all the better. And where we do have to take down trees, there's also maybe some opportunities for habitat creation. So I'm just going to end here on this example from New England Wood, where we'd identified a number of diseased ash trees that were needed to be taken down. They were roadside trees, but rather than just cut them at ground level, we thought we'd make something of it. So sort of mimicking natural processes, we left some areas of standing timber and created some natural fracture cuts to sort of mimic natural tear outs. And these will create great deadwood habitats and sap runs, which will benefit insects. But also using a chainsaw, we were able to carve in some other sort of cavities for nesting birds. So we did two types of cavities. So we've got on the right here, these kind of keyhole cavities. Did a couple of these, which were quickly occupied this spring by wrens. So both were occupied by wrens' nests, can be seen in this top right-hand corner. And also things such as carving in a nest box as well. So if you take your attention to this sort of middle picture, you'll see a nest box cavity that was created, which something has quickly taken up home in as well. So it's just a point to illustrate that we will be having to remove some trees because of health and safety concerns, but there's various ways we can do that. We want to look after and retain trees wherever possible and allow that sort of genetic churn and regeneration to happen. But we can also make the best of a bad situation and create some great and valued habitat along the way. So just to finish, I'm going to run this short clip of the happy new resident of one of these homes. So you can see a great tip there that's quickly took up the opportunity to nest. So thank you, everyone, and I look forward to fielding any questions later on in the evening. Thanks very much.
I think you can all see and hear me now. So I will just share my presentation and I'll talk you through what the Saving Devon's Treescape project is doing in relation to this crisis. So as Zoe said at the start, the Saving Devon's Treescape project launched last March. So we've been running for about 15 months now. It's being led by the Devon Wildlife Trust on behalf of the Devon Ash Dieback Resilience Forum. But it is a partnership project. So the many partner logos you can see on the screen there. And we have multiple funders, including the National Lottery Heritage Fund, One Tree Planted, and Tesco Bags of Help. So lots of local councils and AOMBs that are supporting the project. So over the course of 5 years, the project aims to plant and nurture 250,000 trees outside of woodlands across Devon. The project is working across the whole of Devon. We do have 5 priority landscapes, which are South Devon, Torbay, Exeter and Cranbrook, Collie Valleys, and Naroche, which passes over into Somerset as well. And about 50% of the project resource will go into these 5 areas. And those 5 areas are a combination of rural and urban areas, as Ash Dieback is going to be everywhere across our landscape. So just getting the diversity of the landscapes there as well. So as Nathan explained, Ash Dieback is going to affect nearly all of our ash trees, and as said, they're across our whole landscape. So they're often in urban areas outside of woodlands, so just trees on the sides of roads, as well as rural landscapes as well. But hopefully we are aiming so that everyone can be part of the solution to ensure that we do have diverse and resilient landscape moving forward. So one of the key principles of the project is advocating for the 3-2-1 principle. So this is an ash replacement formula, which means we want to plant and encourage planting of at least 3 new trees for every large ash tree that has to be taken down, 2 for a medium and 1 for a small. And just by doing this, we hope that that will get enough new growth happening across our landscapes, so that we have a strong future treescape. We're also advocating, obviously, for the right tree in the right place, and we take great care to assess landscapes and areas before planting to ensure that we're planting the right things. So there's many different aspects to the project. So not only are we tree planting, but we're also ensuring that the ash tree isn't forgotten and that its heritage lives on. So I'll just talk you through many of the different ways that you can get involved. So one area is our free tree scheme. I think I saw some of the community groups that have supported the project over the past year on the call, so you can probably see your photos up there as well. But we are doing a free tree scheme. So this is where people can collect a free tree, we generally say between 1 and 5, and then go plant it in their gardens. So this is an opportunity for anyone with a bit of land to be able to plant at least 1 tree. The original plan was that we were going to give these away at the rural shows and Devon County show. Obviously, COVID had other plans. So community groups came to the rescue and held free tree hubs across Devon over the last year. So this is where community groups held an event either in a garden centre or community centre or at a school. And then people were able to come along and collect a tree and then go home and plant it. And then once planted, as you can see in the bottom left of the screen, post a picture on social media so we can see where all of those trees end up. This has been really popular. The picture in the top left is the Sidmouth tree hub that we did back in October last year. And we had a queue out the door until all the trees were gone, basically. It was incredibly popular. So hopefully next year we can put on far more of these hubs and have a greater range across the county as well. We are also aiming to plant a landmark tree in every parish across Devon, which I learned there's quite a lot of parishes, but we started this year with just doing 12. So you can see there's one in Broadclist, there's the Sidmouth Mayor in the middle there, and these are central, well, these are light standards. You can see they're larger trees than what we're giving away at the free tree hubs, but their aim is that they will grow big and strong and be central parts of a community. So where education can happen and just a focal point that you can raise awareness of the importance of treescapes. We're also planting community orchards as well, so fruit trees in public spaces, and a few other different types of trees within community bits of land. We're also working with our partners FWAG Southwest, who are able to do free landowner advisory visits. So for anyone that owns land but unsure how to manage their current treescapes, or they want to do some planting but are unsure, we're able to come and offer free advice around this. So whether that's planting copses or planting some hedgerow trees or tagging some hedgerow trees, this is all something we can advise on. And then either we can advise on the best way to get funding for that through capital works or countryside stewardship. If not, the project can also supply trees to landowners. So as you can see in the bottom middle one there, we did a planting of 500 trees over near, I can't remember now, Hemmet. Anyway, in the Blackdown Hills, HOMB. We've done some hedgerow planting there as well. And we've also got lots of volunteers out to support these landowners with the planting. Because often it's not just getting the trees and the protection to go with it, but it's also having the time to plant this level of tree. So that's also been really popular, and we have, wonderful to see so many landowners wanting to do good with their land with trees. So we're supporting that wherever possible. We've also, again, slightly hit by COVID this year, but we run many community events and work with schools. So this year, we haven't been able to go in and do educational sessions with schools, but we have been able to offer trees for planting. So you can see me there handing over some trees to Tiverton Community College for them to do some patching up of a hedgerow that they have. So it was a really great way to get the children involved. We've also been setting up some micro tree nurseries within the schools so that they can start growing their own trees, then either plant those out within their own land, work with local landowners, or they can distribute them locally with the pupils as well. Where possible, back in October mainly, we did put on some community events. So that is our Treescapes mural, which we had in our Seaton Jurassic Centre last October half term, where children were able to pledge what they were going to do for Treescapes. Lots of recycling their paper and stuff like that, which was a lovely way to engage them, and a beautiful mural as well. Obviously, we've ended up doing a lot of online events as well, but it's been able to reach new audiences that way, which has been fantastic. And you'll find many of them on the Devon Wildlife Trust YouTube channel as well, so you can watch back. So we've also set up a community tree nursery up at our reserve at Meath Quarry. We set this up last August over summer and started collecting seeds in September. So it's in its first year at the moment. We have a fantastic group of volunteers. We have people going up twice a day, checking on the seedlings. So we do everything from collecting the seed, processing the seed. Generally sits in winter, sits in a fridge for most of winter, and then it comes out in spring into propagators, and we're currently in the process of pricking them out. And then these trees will form part of our free tree scheme. So we'll be able to give these trees away for free to communities to plant. It's all locally sourced stock, which is a gap that there is in the market at the moment. There's not much locally sourced Devon stock. So that is something that we were trying to fill, and we're also trying to fill some of the local species that are lacking in nurseries as well. So this year we were able to propagate some Devon whitebeam, and hopefully in future years we can look at other species like the Plymouth pear as well. It's really great if you do live near Meath and you want to volunteer. We're always looking for new volunteers. There's a fantastic space and a fantastic community up there, and it's been really great to see everything from the collection of the seed all the way through. We've got some nice healthy looking trees that are coming through now as well. If we're successful with our funding next year, we'll also be looking to start a second community tree nursery near Broadclist. And that'll be another really exciting venture. But whereas Meath, we're focusing on cell grown trees, so you can see them in their little pots there. At Broadclist, we'll be focusing on bare root trees instead, so growing in raised beds. And I should also mention, if our funding is successful, we'll also hopefully have some grants available to support communities to also open their own micro tree nurseries, like we're trialling with schools this year, so we can hopefully just get lots more Devon stock growing and being planted out across the county. So Nathan mentioned that there are lots of species that rely on the ash tree, and so we have a citizen science programme that is monitoring some of those species. So we have done training on the brown hair streak butterfly. So we've been monitoring their eggs over winter. You can see in the top right-hand corner. We have been monitoring bats, and we're hoping that we'll be able to get the bat detectors out over summer as well, picking up from the Devon Bat Survey. We have lichen monitoring we're doing as well. We're also hopefully next year going to look into harvest mice monitoring, because we've noticed they like to make their nests in the bottom of tree tubes. So hopefully we're hoping we can gather some more data from that. And we've also created an app where all of this is stored. So we're also looking for people to go out and record notable trees near them. So this can be any large tree that you walk past, or even you can see from your garden, or while you're out and about on walks. And this will just help us really understand Devon's treescapes better and the health of them better and how they're being affected. And obviously there are some specific questions if you log an ash tree as well, so that if there are any trees that are showing signs of resistance, then we can look at them over time. But yeah, really valuable data that we're gathering from all of these species. I'm really grateful for everyone that's been able to take part in that. We also have our landscape photography kits. So there are currently, well, I think there's currently 15 of these out across Devon, although there should be 25 soon. I feel like it's a bit of a treasure hunt, and I should award prizes for anyone that gets all 25. But these are little metal brackets that have been put up. There's 5 in each of our priority focus areas. And the point is that you put your mobile phone in the bracket, take a picture, send it into the email address listed, and then we are able to gather photos from that exact location, hopefully over the 5 years of the project. So that again will give us really valuable data on to see how our treescapes are changing. And they've all been put in different areas. So some are of treescapes that are currently healthy and are being managed. Others are where felling work is due to take place, especially with ash trees. So we can hopefully just start to see what impact that is having, and yeah, gather really valuable information so that we can therefore better understand the management needed going forward. One of our partners is also Beeford Arts, and we have done several things with them. So with the few pictures you can see there with people in it, again, we were able to do some walks and talks through woodlands with our storyteller, Lisa, and she took people on a magical journey through ash folklore. And it was all wonderful. We also did some of them online, so you might have been able to catch that, and we're hoping to do again more next year. But really engaging people with, yeah, a different side of ash, and taking on that emotional journey through its history. And then through Nathan's presentation and the photos in here, you might be able to spot quite a lot of really beautiful photos which have been taken by our photographer, Robert Darch. So we commissioned him at the start of the project to capture everything to do with ash. So ash trees themselves, the felling of ash trees, and then the replanting of new trees as well. So you can head to his website and view his entire collection there, which has been fantastic. And we're hoping, again, hopefully we can get an actual exhibition up with his work soon as well. So that is a quick whirlwind through the project. As I said, there's many ways you can get involved, everything from volunteering to plant trees, volunteering at our nurseries, becoming a citizen science volunteer, and logging some key species and notable trees, as well as just attending our walks and talks, and being a part and spreading the word. But yeah, that is Saving Devon's Treescapes in a nutshell.
Thank you, Rosie. That was fantastic. I know obviously trees possibly hold a special place in all of our hearts, but it's useful to understand the risks to them and the solutions, of course. As you can imagine, there's lots of questions, but please feel free to include any questions in the chat if you're in the audience. We obviously will get through as many as possible. So I'll pass them on to each of you depending on your expertise, as it were. The first question is, given the devastation that will take place over the coming years, is there no chance of a solution being found or applied? And then there's a similar question about is there anyone in the world actually working on the treatment of this disease?
I'll take that one. So in terms of a solution, not really, apart from how we manage our trees going forward, really. As I mentioned before, there is a proportion of the population that is tolerant to the disease. So if we make the right management decisions and nurture those trees, and also retain, it's important to know that diseased ash trees, in their period of decline, they still can set seed, and their progeny might be tolerant to the disease. Just because the parent tree wasn't tolerant doesn't mean the offspring, that the progeny won't be. So is in how we manage our trees and our woodlands, that will be the key to making sure that ash survive in the long run. Forest research, which are a branch of the Forest Commission, they're doing some trials into genetic resistance and actually breeding genetically sort of tolerant stock, but that's still in development. So that's another potential solution, that we can be putting ash trees back out into the countryside that we are confident that will be tolerant to the disease.
Fair enough. And the next question is, when a number of roadside trees are felled, are there any plans to remove the roots and replace them with different tree saplings?
Generally, roadside operations, they won't be removing the roots. The cost and the destruction that would be caused there would just make it sort of unviable, really. The trees, even when they're cut at their base, they will coppice. Ash trees coppice readily, so they will throw up new growth the following year. The downside is it's more than likely that that's just going to get reinfected with the disease year on year until the point that, you know, it finally succumbs. But generally, roadside operations, they will just be coppicing out the ash trees, and often, as long as there's neighbouring trees that are able to occupy that space, that's not necessarily a bad thing that they're not replaced. Where there aren't replacement trees, that's where the work that kind of Rosie's doing is really important, that we you know, proactively encourage new trees, whether that's through planting or just protecting hedgerow trees from the hedge flail. And so you can single out trees within a hedgerow, for example, that we want to grow on as standards. So selecting other species that would be ready and available, be them oaks or sycamores or whatever.
Fantastic. The next question is, I have a new empty garden. Can I still get trees? I'm going to pass this on to you, Rosie.
So planting season is generally in autumn and winter, so generally October to March time. So we're currently not doing any planting at the moment, but we hope to restart our hubs back up in autumn. So we are in between funding at the moment. We're hoping we'll hear in autumn, and if we're successful, then I think I've got about 7,000 trees to give away in our free tree hubs, so there'll be plenty to go around, and lots of willing people to host them as well. So as soon as we have more information, it'll be up on the website.
Yeah, just a note on that, with the Treescapes, we've got a Treescapes page, but we've also got obviously our social media channels, and we do promote the hubs as and when they are active. So we'll be sure to let everyone know when they can grab some trees. The next question is there a danger to overreacting to the threat, as it seems that about Ash Dieback's been around for about 70 years, according to an article about stress-related disorders. The author claims that many trees are being felled that don't have Chillara or might have survived. They argue that large-scale ash removal was a scandal on the scale of scrubbing the hedgerows in the 1960s.
There's definitely a risk of us being overzealous in the removal of trees. I would agree with that, certainly, and that's where the advice of professional tree managers and tree contractors comes in, really. So if you've got trees on your own land, then it's best to look for accreditations like the arbor-proof contractors, and these should be the sort of at the top of their game in terms of tree climbers and tree surgeons. But also getting advice from the Forestry Commission, from us at Devon Wildlife Trust, in terms of what is best practice. Certainly there are symptoms that can be easily mistaken. You know, trees are under attack from any number of, you know, parasites and pests and diseases, and they're under, you know, a degree of stress throughout their whole lives. You know, it's a constant fight, isn't it, the natural world. And so some symptoms of canopy decline, as I mentioned in my talk, drought stress can kind of look similar, that the trees will put out poor leaves in any given year. But that's why ongoing monitoring of individual trees is really important, and to also look at the risk and try and sort of zone the risk, if you like, when you're making decisions of whether or not to cut down trees, because really the threats that trees pose to us as the public is still very, very low. So it's only really in those high risk locations where you've either got an immovable object such as a building, or, you know, a heavily used road or high public access area, where you need to start thinking about proactive management.
Fair enough. The sort of a question to follow on from that is, before trees are planted on grassland sites, are the sites thoroughly surveyed to ensure that the site isn't a wildlife-rich grassland? I think this possibly goes to you, Rosie.
Yes. So yeah, as I mentioned, for the larger sites, we have our partners Flag Southwest, who are able to carry out free advisory visits, and they also work alongside DBRC. So the I completely forgot what it stands for now. The
Devon Biodiversity Record Centre.
Thank you for saving me. So we also look at past records and see what's been reported, and we're able to add to those records as well if we notice anything currently. And then for our single trees, we have provided a planting and aftercare guide. So that provides advice on people for things to look out for and things to think about when planting a tree, just to make sure that we are ensuring the right tree is planted in the right place.
Excellent. So the next question is, the last year has seen the power of science in developing a vaccine. Couldn't anything have been done to treat ash trees? Secondly, if ash trees are not on direct paths, do they absolutely need to be cut down?
I'll have a go at that, I suppose. I suppose maybe it comes down to resources, and the whole world was looking for this vaccine. Whether science could come up with a solution with Ash Dieback, I don't know. I think it's here to stay. And like I said before, we just got to think about how we manage our woodlands and our landscape trees. The second part of the question, remind me, Zoe, what was?
The second part was, if they're not on direct paths, do they absolutely need to be cut down? I think you sort of fairly.
No, so certainly not. You want to take a risk-based approach. So assess the level of risk that those trees pose to whatever you perceive as being your target, if you like, to use tree management sort of talk. So really, it's very dependent on a tree by tree basis, and this is why it's important to get professional advice. But generally speaking, the larger the tree, the larger the consequence, and also the more busy or the area, or if it's close to a building or property or public, then that's when you need to start thinking about where you have diseased trees, what's the best line of attack, really. Often this can not mean cutting down the tree. It could just be simply diverting a footpath, for example. That allows you to retain some diseased ash trees, and that's far better for the environment.
Actually, on that note, I think we did that exactly on, was it Emsworthy Mire Reserve? We redirected a boardwalk to save a veteran ash tree. So you're right in that there are different solutions. Yeah,
certainly, yeah.
So the next question is, the last year has, oh no, sorry, I already asked that question. Do trees need aftercare to thrive? So I'll pass this on to you, Rosie.
Yes, they do. Which I think Nathan backs. Yes, they absolutely do. They need lots of care, basically, especially in those first few years, especially with the changeable weather we have in this country as well. April saw drought followed by a month of rain. So in some cases, they might even need watering if we have a summer like we did last year, but also just checking the vegetation around the tree to ensure there's not too much competition, where needed, putting down a mulch mat or clearing things away. But yeah, we have created a planting and aftercare guide, which again you can find on the website, which gives kind of a step-by-step process of things you need to think about in the following year's planting. And for our larger plantings as well, we do a full management plan with looking up to 10 years of what management you need to do to keep them happy and healthy.
It doesn't hurt to hug a tree if it's big enough to withstand it.
Yes.
What progress is being made in exploring the genetic code of resilient ash trees and the use of resilient stock for regeneration?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, Forest Research are working on that in the southeast of England. So they've had field trials ongoing for a number of years now. So I think they're making headway on that, but I don't know the latest. But if you wanted to find out, your best port of call is Forest Research and look for ash trials.
Fair enough. The next question is this a Devon initiative or is it a nationwide for the trusts?
It's Devon at the moment, although we do pass slightly over to the Somerset border in the Narosha area. But yeah, at the moment, I believe many trusts are looking towards us to see how the initiative goes, see about how popular it is. As I said, we've just done our first year, and so we're now applying for our funding for future years. So fingers crossed we'll be successful and we can continue, and then we can continue to share lessons as well with other trusts and other organisations. So I'll just say as well, there are lots of tree nurseries popping up across Devon as well. And so we are all working together. So one's just got funding in Exmoor, and you've got more trees down in Dartmoor. So there are lots of bits going on all over the place, and we are joining up wherever we can.
So with everyone's help, we can be the true representative trust for saving treescapes.
Hopefully, yeah.
So the next question is, are all varieties of ash affected?
All of our European species of ash. So in the UK, we only have one native ash tree, common ash, Fraxinus excelsior. But others are planted occasionally. So you may see narrow-leaved ash is fairly common in sort of urban areas, but also affected to varying degrees is the sort of answer to that question. The Fraxinus family is fairly diverse across the world. Obviously, those species that are native to Asia, they've co-evolved with the disease and don't have much in the way of ill effects. But a lot of the ash trees found in Europe and the Americas are adversely affected. So yeah, it does vary depending on where you are in the world and what species you're looking at.
So I guess this initiative could end up being sort of beyond nationwide, depending on the effect on other species then. So the next question is, are seedlings more susceptible? If we see seedlings surviving beyond the first year, does that mean they might be tolerant?
Could well be, yes. So certainly younger trees succumb to disease a lot quicker than mature trees. So generally in mature trees, it'd be quite a drawn out process. But yeah, you'll see the most severe effects, and they're more accessible as well because they're closer to ground level in the younger trees. But yeah, it can really knock them back in just a couple of years, really. But if you do see natural regeneration in our woodlands, and they apparently are healthy sort of midsummer, when you should be, it's the best time obviously to look for the symptoms of disease when they should be in full leaf, then yeah, they're obviously the ones to safeguard and keep an eye on because they could be tolerant stock.
Yeah, and the plug for the app that obviously Rosie mentioned before, that it's important for us to monitor it sort of officially, and you can find all those details on the website as well, just so we've kind of got a central database, as it were. So the next question, which you may or may not know the answer to, is, do we know how the fungi entered Europe? Was it through a live specimen or from timber? Would this knowledge inform how we manage timber or tree import or exports?
Yeah, we don't know exactly, I don't think, how it came in. I mean, like I said, it's microscopic spores that travel on the wind is sort of natural dispersal mechanism. But with global trade, both in live tree stock and other products, the opportunities for sort of non-native invasive pests is greater than it's ever been. The Forestry Commission and other sort of woodland owners are trying to do their best in terms of controlling pests and diseases, which are on the rise, particularly in the UK over the last sort of couple of decades. But it's a massive challenge. You've got to go back to sort of how we manage our borders and our import exports. So yeah, there's a lot more room for improvement as well.
Fair enough. So the next question is there a positive use we can make of the wood from the essential tree felling? Can we move felled ash wood or carve it?
I'll say one thing and then I'll pass to Nathan. Yes, there's many uses for ash. I will just plug Marcus, who created a sculpture from, I'm going to get the number wrong now, 30 or 50 felled ash trees to mark the significance of Ash Dieback. So he was able to create a fantastic sculpture that just raised awareness, that we hosted in our Seaton Jurassic Centre, and which we'll be collaborating with again later this summer. But yeah, I just thought I'd share that one use of the way to raise awareness of Ash Dieback and the issue through felled trees. But I'll pass to Nathan for other uses.
Yeah, certainly ash is a very useful timber. It's depending on how the tree's grown. If you've got sort of timber grade saw logs, then it's great for furniture making. Great for internal applications, not durable outside like some of our other woods like oak and sweet chestnut. So good if you want to make something for indoor use, and obviously is great firewood as well. But wherever possible, you know, my recommendation would be to leave that that timber in the wood or close to where the tree was felled to provide sort of deadwood habitat, which really kickstarts our woodland ecosystem and is so vital. As I mentioned in my talk, if it's possible not to remove the whole tree and leave a standing section, even if that's just a metre or two, like cutting the tree slightly higher or pollarding the tree back, then that's definitely preferable as well than removing the tree in entirety. But yeah, certainly uses, if you can't leave the timber where it is, or you've got a particular use for it, then yeah, ash can be made into many fine things.
So your next project will be a Chilara Tower. So the next question is about plastic tree protectors. So how long do trees need protection for, and is there anything we could do with the plastic tubes afterwards? Reuse, recycle.
Yeah, obviously plastic tree tubes are one of the big problems for tree planting. And this past year we have used the plastic tree protectors, but we are testing some new ones, and we're working alongside the Woodland Trust and Forestry Commission as well to test alternatives. Problem is it just takes years to test because, yeah, to answer the other bit of the question, they can be there for 5 or so years. And so we need to ensure that any protection that we do use can last that long and won't disintegrate between that. So I know there are lots of trials going on with lots of different materials at the moment, and we're working closely with those. We're also looking at alternatives as well where possible. So we'll be trialing whether we can fence off areas, because deer being one of the biggest threats to trees, but whether we can limit that with some fencing and trying just alternative methods. This year we've also used biodegradable mulch mats, and haven't been using plastic pegs to put them in either. Been looking at alternatives for that, including bamboo skewers and various different things. So yeah, it's going to be an ongoing problem just because it does need to withstand many years out in many elements, and it does need to provide good protection against animals, because yeah, there's no point in planting some trees if they're then just going to get eaten. So yeah, it's going to be an ongoing problem, but something that we are working closely with partners on to see if we can hopefully find some alternatives that are more environmentally friendly.
Fantastic. And I think probably this will be the last question, or maybe a couple more questions depending on how long the answer is. So when trees are new planted, what sort of percentage are you expecting from the whole number to succeed and thrive? As I've seen somewhere less than 50% seem to be surviving, some pushed over or never get out of the plastic sleeve, and percentage don't get enough aftercare. Would it not be better to work on a very high percentage of survival than choose to survive later?
Well, an open-ended question in terms of, you know, the survival rate of newly planted trees would be heavily dependent on how well it was planted in the first place, what the aftercare and maintenance like in the subsequent years, and also the sort of environmental and climatic conditions where it's planted and whether it's suitable for the location that it's planted in. So it depends how well you did the job in the first place, would probably be the short answer.
Fair enough. So the next question is presumably kind of to you, Nathan, I think. Other than by leaves, what points of entry does the fungus have?
So the main mechanism is through the leaves, but as I illustrated with that slide looking at the basal lesions, when the spore loading, so the number of spores gets to a really high level on the woodland floor, for example, underneath a tree, if it finds a chink in the armor of the tree's defenses, you know, it could be a bit of damage to the bark or something like that. It can find a point of entry anywhere into the tree's tissues. The common way is it's a slow sort of dying back of the crown from the extremities, but if there's enough of the spores and there's potentially some damage to a tree, it might just get in right at the base and then cause real issues in terms of the stability of that tree. So yeah, various points, most commonly through the leaves, and then it progresses in from there.
Fair enough. So I think this question probably rounds off the talk quite nicely. What ways can we volunteer to plant trees, and sort of what other ways can we get involved?
A beautiful rounding question. So from the presentation, our tree planting, as I said, happens throughout autumn and winter. So we are not planting anything at the moment, but I am now looking for communities to get involved that want to host hubs for next year, who want to plant landmark trees or community orchards. I'm looking for landowners who want to understand how they can better manage their land for treescapes and might want an advisory visit or have land to plant more. Generally, the quick and easy answer is to contact me if you think you want to get involved. But yeah, there's also our citizen science elements. So that's ongoing over summer. You can record trees at any time. It's even better now that the leaves are out, so you can actually identify them a bit easier. So you can do that through our app, which we can share a link to. And also we'll be setting up bat detectors across summer as well. So we'll have some host hubs where you can then go and hire the bat detector for a few days and do some monitoring yourselves as well. But yeah, we'll share the website, which I think has pretty much all of the ways you can get involved. But yeah, if you are thinking of planting trees or you want to get your community involved in any way, or parish council, then get in touch with me and I will chat you through the different options.
Fantastic. Well, I'd just like to say a massive thank you to you both. You obviously have a huge amount of knowledge about trees and sort of how we can help protect them. And I think obviously we're still learning about Ash Dieback, and it's important for us to share knowledge and get involved and obviously kind of share with other trusts and other movements. And I just obviously like to say a thank you to you all. You've asked some fantastic questions and I've certainly learned a lot. If you've enjoyed our talk, please take a look at our What's On page for more talks. I believe we've got one led by the Conservation Communities project this Thursday, but we'll be doing sort of outdoor and indoor sort of events as well. As Rosie mentioned, we obviously have a web page with all this information on, and we will send a link to that page after this talk as well, so you can see how you can get involved basically. But yes, again, a big thank you to our speakers and a thank you to our audience, and good evening.